There are so many crazy characters in Marvel Comics that some just get kind of forgotten sometimes, especially when it comes to villains, because those guys can get defeated and either sent to the afterlife or locked up in prison and we never have to think about them again. For example, we've got Armless Tiger Man. Gustav Hertz worked in a mechanical laboratory in Munich, Germany during the 1940s. Now unfortunately for Hertz, one day his arms got caught in a machine and had to be amputated. While this is a horrible thing to happen to anybody, Gustav did survive the experience and he was later given reading material on how to operate day to day without arms, instead using his mouth and feet to complete daily tasks. Turns out that he was really good at this. Hertz developed ridiculous skill in using his teeth and feet. He even took things a couple steps further. He sharpened his teeth into fangs so that he could bite people, and he even developed above average levels of strength and dexterity in his jaw, legs, and toes, allowing him to bend steel with his mouth, kick really hard, and throw daggers with his toes. He ended up proving how capable he was as a World War II enemy of the hero Angel and Wakanda, where he was completely destroyed by that era's Black Panther. What was really surprising was when he reappeared in Incredible Hercules number 129 to 131 in 2009. He was among a group of individuals that were the Greek god Pluto's jury of the undead, and they together put Zeus on trial and subdued Hercules himself. Past that though, Armless Tiger Man has appeared one more time in Ziggy Pig's Silly Seal Comics Volume 2 number 1 in 2019, and let's be honest, no one really read that. Now, Hulk villains are always a fun thing to talk about because they are either super smart or incredibly powerful, both of which make for a fun read. The character Ravage is one villain that is both of those things wrapped into one, which makes it all the more puzzling that he has completely disappeared. Dr. Jeffrey Crawford was a former mentor of Bruce Banner, who used the Hulk's gamma radiation to cure himself of a debilitating neuromuscular disease, while pretending that he was trying to help Banner cure himself of the Hulk persona. Unfortunately, like a good chunk of others who subject themselves to gamma, Crawford became a big old green monster who is subject to fits of rage. But unlike a good chunk of other gamma mutates, Jeffrey kept his wits and was both an incredibly strong villain able to rival the Hulk physically, but also cunning and able to outthink the Hulk as well. He had this plan to try and become Ravage full-time instead of only temporarily hulking out. Banner had to team up with General Ross to try and bring him down, resulting in a huge brawl between the two Green Goliaths, but it was actually Major Talbot who used a cryogenic inducer to freeze Ravage, and he was kept in suspended animation at Gamma Base being researched for ways to defeat the Hulk himself, and the last mention of him was way back in 1998. What always boggles me is when a villain has an absolutely huge backstory that ties into the Elder Gods and the greater Marvel godly planes, but then they just never show up. For example, Akida, or Echidna, however you want to pronounce it. Akida or Echidna was an Elder Spawn, the granddaughter of the Elder God known as Set, who is a big deal in Marvel Comics. Set was the first Elder God to realize that he could steal the power of his other Elder Gods by consuming them, which kicked off a whole massive war between the Elder Gods, turning most of them into demons. So his granddaughter is not someone to mess with. Echidna is the mother of all monsters. She made Angerboda, Cerberus, Chimera, the Lernean Hydra, the Nemean Lion, and the Sphinx, just to name a few. Despite that though, in the modern day, she has been a part of some just straight up sucky teams. In 2013, she became a part of the second Doom Maidens team under Caroline LeFay, who were eventually able to resurrect Morgana Le Fay. And in 2018, she became a part of Namor the Submariner's Defenders of the Deep when he decided that land dwellers weren't allowed in the ocean, and she stayed part of that Atlantean team until she turned on Namor and challenged him for the Atlantean throne and got defeated by Ghost Rider when the Avengers showed up back in 2021. Now, the villain Dr. Bong was a goofy villain even during the Golden Age. He has a metal ball where his left hand should be, and he uses it to create concussive blasts by eye, striking the appendage against his bell-shaped helmet. We actually have no idea how he came to become Dr. Bong, because his backstory mainly just touches on how he was a bullied kid who found power in writing and language, so then he became a very unethical reporter, and then tried to become a celebrity and joined up as a performer with a rock band where he would play different characters, and one of those performances got out of hand when his hand got cut off by a guillotine. I wish I was making that up. Now chronologically, he then appeared in Howard the Duck number 15 in May of 1977 as Dr. Bong with random knowledge of biological engineering and sonics. He faced Howard and eventually She-Hulk, and then in 2010's Deadpool Volume 2, the villain was reimagined just a smidge bit more threateningly as Deadpool's former therapist, and having cloned a team of superheroes, giving his clones regeneration abilities. He then joined a group called the Villains Anonymous, who all had run-ins with Spider-Man, and the last time he was seen was in 2014's Amazing Spider-Man Annual Volume 2, number 1. Now this next one may be one of the more revolting villains out there, and it only gets worse when you learn that Douglas Carmody, the Bogeyman or Boogeyman, was a villain to the Power Pack, a group of kids. Carmody was in charge of the Carmody Research Labs, where Dr. James Power was working to perfect his antimatter power generator. When the Power Pack gained their abilities from the destruction of the generator, Carmody lost his job and essentially blamed the Power Pack for it all. Classic villain backstory. He then went on to hunt the Power Pack, considering them mutants even though they weren't. He stole a battlesuit from Project Pegasus, and using this suit to try and wipe out the Power Pack, he ended up coming into battle with Asgard's Warriors 3 and the New Mutants. Now in Power Pack number 40, a demon named Nastir, I think is how you pronounce it, invaded New York City, and he turned several people, including Bogeyman or Boogeyman, into demons. And for Carmody, he basically embraced it completely, permanently staying as a demon while the others returned to normal. He tried to wipe out the Power Pack again with his new abilities, but then he saw himself in a reflection and went tumbling off a building. That was back in 1988. He appeared one more time in 1993's Cage Volume 1, number 19, facing Luke Cage, where he apparently passed away. But this isn't confirmed, and so he is basically considered missing, which isn't at all a pleasant thought. Now, similar to how the High Evolutionary created the New Men, he also created the Man Beast from a red wolf that he genetically modified. However, unlike the New Men, Man Beast was created using a new isotope which granted him a heightened physicality and enhanced mental capabilities, also granting him a greater level of ambition. He terrorized Counter-Earth, or more accurately, he led a revolt against the High Evolutionary, which, I mean, that isn't really so bad. That guy sucks. But he was eventually stopped by Thor before he could do real damage. He tried this 2 more times actually, being defeated by Wolverine and Kitty Pryde the first time, and then on Counter-Earth, he was stopped by Adam Warlock, who slightly devolved Man Beast, which is kind of terrifying to think about. He would then return again on Earth as the Hate Monger, having seemingly re-evolved back into his normal self, but then he was defeated by Spider-Man, and he was thought to be actually killed, but nope! He actually tried to stop the High Evolutionary again, infiltrating his Knights of Wundagore in the late 90s. Unfortunately for the Man Beast, the High Evolutionary and Quicksilver devolved him back into a wolf, but he's returned from that before, so who knows? Next up is the villain known as Belladonna. Belladonna was actually a Spider-Man villain, but it's more accurate to call her a villain to another Spidey villain, Roderick Kingsley, aka Hobgoblin. But before that ever happened, Belladonna was Narda Ravana, a European fashion designer. The problem was that Kingsley was another famous fashion designer, only one that stole from other designers. Kingsley allegedly stole Ravana's designs and marketed them in the United States, stealing her success, and for that, I guess he had to pay. Swearing vengeance, Narda assumed the guise of Belladonna and put together a small group of henchmen. She used toxic gas as her main tool, creating gas that could dissolve Spider-Man's webs, taking people's lives and having her henchmen dress as the Prowler to distract Spider-Man, all for the end goal of wiping out Kingsley from the face of the earth. The most ironic part of this whole situation though, is that Belladonna just didn't have the popularity needed to be a lasting villain, getting arrested in 1980, while Kingsley, he became the Hobgoblin, and he's been causing problems all the way up until 2020 and is bound to come back at some point. Okay, so next Next up is a group of obscure villains made for the express purpose of facing another obscure group of heroes. Heavy Metal was a team made up of a group of cybernetically enhanced, super intelligent animals with weaponized exoskeletons. Can't get much more comic booky than that. Their team members included Armory, an octopus because arms, get it? Tail Gunner, a vulture, Bloodbath, a shark, Ramrod, a rhino, and they were led by Uproar, a blue-faced gorilla. Now this team was created by Adam Frost of Multicorp as a prototype, privately owned attack force set to oppose the team known as Brute Force, which is also a team of cybernetically enhanced super intelligent animals with weaponized exoskeletons. Also created by Multicorp, but they were created by Dr. Randall Pierce, and these guys were good. Except the problem is both of these teams were really just a part of Weapons Plus, the ones who created Captain America and eventually Wolverine, and they are not exactly the best people around. Heavy Metal was around for 4 issues of the Brute Force comic in 1990, and they have never been seen since. Remember back when I talked about Echidna or Echidna, and we talked about the Defenders of the Deep? Well, this team was basically filled with water-based villains that had nothing better to do, and one of them was a guy called Tiger Shark. So get this, Todd Arliss was a swimmer who took part in the Olympic Games. Cool. He ended up damaging his spinal cord when he rescued a drowning man. Dang. He was so desperate to regain his swimming ability that he then willingly participated in an experiment by the scientist Dr. Lemuel Dorcas. Interesting. The doctor blended Arliss's DNA with that of Namor the Submariner and a tiger shark, because of course he did. This experiment was totally successful, only it completely changed Arliss both physically and mentally. Now he had razor-sharp teeth and gills and had become savage and incredibly aggressive. He became a supervillain and named himself Tiger Shark, becoming an adversary for Namor the Submariner. Now funnily enough though, after years and years of battling against Namor and the superhero community, he joined the Defenders of the Deep, and now he hasn't been seen since 2019 when they attacked an oil drilling platform in Alaska. And last up for today is Bram Ving. For starters, he has an incredibly strange name that is very obviously a reference to Bram Stoker and his character Van Helsing. So, Bram Ving, also known as Dread Knight, is better known as an enemy to Tony Stark in the Ultimate Universe. Unfortunately, in the 1610 universe, he just becomes another Iron Man villain that creates another Iron Man-like armor. But in Earth 616, Bram Ving was actually a Latverian scientist who didn't like Doctor Doom's schemes and was punished by having a mask fused to his face. He became kind of like a villain, but also a servant to Doctor Doom in a way, allying himself with Victoria Frankenstein and the creations of Victor Frankenstein, which would make you think that he was actually a hero, but he was never played that way. He eventually moved on from being just a Doctor Doom villain and has gone on to fight Iron Man on a few occasions, as well as the Black Knight and Spider-Man. He was this really cool looking armored up man with an even cooler mask, wielding a super cool lance, riding a black winged horse. It was dope, but curiously, while he's never actually been sent to the afterlife, his last appearance was serving Doctor Doom in Iron Man Legacy Volume 1 Number 3 back in 2010, and he hasn't been seen since. Alrighty, I hope you guys enjoyed watching as much as I enjoyed talking. I'm Adam Andrews, this is Top 10 Nerd. I'll catch you on the flippy flop. Stay safe, and peace out, nerds!